me coming from Africa, I came here to better my life. And I feel like personally, we need to stop using the word racism when we don't get something or when something don't go our way. And just
let me jump in real quick. No disrespect, but racism exists, and I have to acknowledge it. And I can't just ignore it, but what I can do is not buy into the system.
What up, everyone? CharisMaggie here, and welcome back to my channel, where I encourage you to submerge yourself in culture and live meaningful lives. Welcome back to another video. For today, it's a reaction video. I feel like I've seen a lot of conversation happening online regarding like the experiences of African Americans versus Africans, like continental Africans, and sometimes we tend to see them butting heads a bit because the perceptions or the lived experiences are a bit different, and sometimes people allow their opinions in that way to allow conversations to happen in a negative way. And so for this video, I wanted to react to it because it's entitled, "Did Slavery Affect My Family?" This channel is also about, exploring culture through lived experience. So I thought it was fitting to end off Black History Month that I would react to the conversation that is happening. So let's get started.
Step forward if you agree. Slavery affected my family.
Yeah, I mean, that's just evident in my last name, King. I mean, that's the brand of the slave owner that put that name on my family all those years ago, and I'm still wearing it in those ways, along with the compounded, economic disparity, social disparity, mental trauma, all of that. I mean, it's tethered forever.
So to go back to slavery and talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, it has never stopped. So there is no post. What my great-grandparents were teaching my grandparents, who taught my mother, who taught me, came from what they learned through slavery. So there's a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity, a fear of society, a fear of law enforcement. So slavery has made a major impact where the low self-esteem is consistently reoccurring. I think for me, growing up in Los Angeles, California in the early 1960s, there was a stereotype that I didn't want to be black. I didn't want to be African because we come from Africa or we're slaves. So I want to be a Chinese boy. I want to be Bruce Lee. So growing up like that, I didn't like myself and who I was. I didn't like the color of my skin or the way that I spoke. So I emulated other people. I wanted to be something that I was not.
It's very saddening when you can literally only go back a couple generations and then it's like the documents just don't exist. There's no record. It's like, my family has completely been erased. In that same point too, in the time that we've been here, we've created an incredible culture and we have so many things to be proud of. And I always reframe the narrative myself and I speak of my ancestors that were enslaved as, doctors and healers. And it's like, we were taken because we were talented,
right.
Because we had skills to offer. And we built this country, so.
And still building.
And still building, and that's something to take pride in, so.
Can the disagree step forward?
Slavery didn't affect my family, but we did suffer a different type of slavery back home. Like we went through colonization. Like I am Bamileke. There was a massacre of Bamileke. You guys can look it up. They killed like more than 300,000 of my people because we didn't want to assimilate to the French culture. But it's still nothing compared to what you guys' ancestors been through,
I wouldn't want to minimize that pain though. What you just said hurt me. That 300,000 people were killed because they would not conform to the colonization of the French people. So that is just as painful and hurtful as the trauma that we suffered here in America.
I want to shout out this guy, Skip, for actually stepping in and validating the feelings of my African brother here, Prosper, because I think what happens a lot in the conversation is something that they call oppression Olympics, where it's a fight for who suffered the most. And at the end of the day, it shouldn't be like that. We were all impacted in some way, shape, or form. So we hear our African Americans friends talking about, it's hard for them to trace back their ancestry certain generations back, or they don't really know where in Africa they're from, or they can't trace the name because the name that they have is the last name of a slave owner. the same for our continental African brothers and sisters, is that even though they didn't experience slavery in that same way, they experienced some sort of trauma in the way that their tribes sometimes were like wiped out. Colonial powers find different ways to step in and cause certain wars and, you know, ultimately, you know, massacre people. So I love the fact that he didn't allow that to be a minimized experience, but more or say, you know, that is still a painful experience and I wouldn't want to minimize that. We went through pain, you went through pain. So I actually admire that and respect that. Let's continue.
I can't share the same experience that you have went through and your family, even though we also had our own type of slavery. We had apartheid at the time, you know, where the Dutch people took over and they wanted to just have South Africa, Namibia, and I think other countries where we could only just speak Dutch. It's somehow still happening even now. There's like a place in South Africa where it's called Orania, you know, and it's just Dutch people there. No black person is even allowed there. So we still somehow feel that oppression even now, but it's nothing compared to what your ancestral history, you know, has gone through. I'm somehow happy that you guys have forgiven it, even though you haven't forgotten it. Have you forgiven it? I mean, like the face, like.
Do that, but me personally, no, I haven't. But I want to work through the change. But no, I have not forgiven because it's a system that's still going on. And from what I'm hearing from you guys, there's a system that's still going on in Africa as well, and it's a war on us.
I don't know how many of you actually know about apartheid. One of the things that I remembered, or a book I should say, that made me learn a bit more about what apartheid really was. So I learned about, you know, Nelson Mandela, his story, but it was Trevor Noah, his book, Born a Crime, that made me actually understand what apartheid really was and how it really functioned. And just to give you some context, it's like a version of Jim Crow and segregation that happened here in the States. So they had a system like that. I believe South Africa was like the only country in Africa that they were able to successfully implement some sort of system of segregation that was basically a replica of what they did in America. So yeah.
Racism is the main cause of poverty among black people in America.
I think the crucial missing point when we talk about economic disparity, time. Time is the most valuable currency. And if you have a stock that's like the American dream is the stock, and you know, during all that time, all that asset, the American dream was appreciating, and you're not allowed to take out business loans, you're not allowed to read, you're not allowed to write, you had to first fight to become 3/5 of a citizen, then you got Jim Crow, and then you got everything else. It's like, you're now having to buy in at a price so high because the time is irreparable. You can't get that back. One black person today cannot, in one lifetime, achieve what generations of white families were able to do simply because they didn't have to compete with us to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you totally.
Yeah, I was thinking, just like you said, from a historical standpoint, we start with slavery, then that's centuries, generations of stolen labor, like you said. Then we get into Jim Crow, which is just an extension of that. Then we have redlining, we have mass incarceration, we have events like the bombing of Tulsa and Rosewood in Florida, and all these different examples of our wealth being decimated. And I don't say that to come from a defeatist or a victim mindset, but I think if we just have an honest conversation about history and what we've gone through when we've been here, racism is definitely a big part of that. And there are a lot of successful black Americans, a lot of millionaires, a lot of, you know, business owners, but they're exceptions for sure for a reason. And there's a big difference between income and wealth. I would like to challenge the ideal that African Americans are lazy or that we don't have a good work ethic. I think there's this perception that, you know, we're here, we're in America, how are we not doing better for ourselves?
Well, I like the fact that he also mentioned at the end, trying to challenge that stereotype that African Americans are lazy, because one conversation that I've also seen with online conversations is I've seen people said, you know, when they're coming from Africa, they've had people who told them, you know, don't associate themselves with African Americans because this and that. So I would say that there are definitely very damaging stereotypes that are being spread amongst us about each other, and that causes us to kind of want to compete about who suffered the most, or I am able to do this, why are you not able to do this, instead of looking at the history or the reasons that caused for certain things to not happen. So yeah, interesting.
I thought I was going to be the only one staying. I was going to be like, oh, I'm about to be like Kanye West. But okay, there's a lot of things we can use as an excuse to hold us back, to not to reach our potential. But it's up to us to look past that. You know, like me coming from Africa, I came here to better my life, my family. I'm the only one here. And since I have been here, there's a lot of bad things that happen to me. There's also a lot of good things that happen to me. Us African or African American, we need to like look past like racism and like just focus on our own goal. Like, what do we want to achieve? We need to stop using the word racism when we don't get something or when something don't go our way, and just keep trying. You know.
So let me jump in real quick.
Okay, so before I continue, what Skip is saying, this is something that I've seen even here in Canada, and what I want a lot of my fellow friends, not just from Africa, because I see this with also Caribbean folks, you have to understand that yes, even though you're able to come, like you're coming from countries that maybe the reason you moved away is because of the lack of resources, job opportunities, or the economy is not expanding in a way for you to get a job in a field that you're interested in. You come to Canada or you come to the US and you notice how so many opportunities are here for you to be able to leverage and use to build yourself up. What I feel like some people aren't really aware of is like, even though there are opportunities that are afforded for you, people don't sometimes realize that just for you to even be able to come to another country, there is some level of privilege that you have to be able to even do that. We all know how immigration like works to some extent. If you're an immigrant, they want to see proof of income. They want to see that you can sustain yourself in the country. So you have to have a certain amount of money that you're even showing in your bank account before they even actually allow you to come in. Otherwise, maybe other people are coming as like a refugee or something like that. Those are other exceptions. But when you're looking at like the historical, systematic issues that Black Canadians or Black Americans have faced where deliberately they were not given opportunities, that is where the conversation needs to come in as to why it is that they were not able to do certain things instead of blaming them for not doing it. If you don't have the resources to do something, you're not able to do it as much as you would like to go past and get your dreams accomplished. You still need to have resources available to you to do that, whether it's through mentorship, money, funding, whatever. There is some resource that someone will need in order to be able to climb, to better themselves. So even though I think Skip also agreed that racism isn't the main issue for poverty in America, I believe he has a point that he's going to touch on as to why he didn't agree, but he's also recognizing that racism does exist. So let's correct that for sure.
No disrespect, but racism exists, and I have to acknowledge it. And I can't just ignore it, but what I can do is not buy into the system. You know, if I want to do something, let me be the entrepreneur. What I believe happened in the 1960s is that we started looking for equal rights, to be equal with other people. And what we stopped doing, and I heard you talk about Tulsa, we stopped using the Black-owned businesses. Now, because you guys got to understand, the Fair Housing Act in 1968, I'm 5 years old. That's when we could move off the east side of LA and move into other subcultures. So what I wanted to do at 8 years old was go to IHOP. I didn't want to go to the Ma and Pa restaurant anymore. I wanted to go to, let's go eat at the hotels. So what we did is stop supporting each other and started supporting corporate America. So the racism plays a major part, but we don't have to buy into it.
I've been waiting to disagree with you, my brother. I'm waiting patiently. The thing is, even though I want to disagree with you, I get where you're coming from. When I see Black people talking about racism, all that stuff, I'm like, what is wrong with these people? You guys have food, you have EBT, all this thing, and you're here shouting about somebody is racist too. Just leave that person and move on. I feel that way. Like, why are they always like complaining? But when Black Lives Matters started happening, like, I sat down, I said, I need to actually know why these people are pained. And if we look at the history, what they've done to them, like if you actually sit down, watch some documentaries, how they were maltreated, I don't think if I'm actually born, I will forgive those people. I don't care. It's easier for us Africans that were raised in Africa to feel like they're complaining because we were raised through struggle. Like I barely even have water, and you have water, you're complaining. But then it's not about the basic necessity or about how we are raised. We are raised like, I don't want to say way better, we might not have resources, but there are some way, like our own people will not look down on us or put us behind. So it's in they're nurtured that way. Like they just can't overlook it. And if you sit down and watch everything that the forefathers have been through for you, I changed my mind. No, they need to be angry. However, they should still move forward.
I love that people are able to just have conversations. I don't think that you have to agree with everything someone's saying or disagree. It's just a matter of ensuring that whenever you're disagreeing, though, that you have a reason to back up that disagreement. It shouldn't just be, oh, this, that, and the third. Like, she is able to recognize that at first she was looking at her own struggles that she's going on with back home and looking at, you know, a first world country like America. Why is it that Black people in America are complaining and they are in the greatest place on earth? But being able to recognize that she looked at the experiences, really delve a bit deeper in understanding, having conversations with people, she got to know a bit more of what was actually happening, and that kind of changed her perspective a bit. So yeah, it's all about, I think you just have to talk to people, get to know where they're coming from, and just don't be so quick to judge. Just get to understand, and then you can make up your mind for yourself at the end of the day.
I mean, we have police brutality back home too.
Sure.
We have, like, if you go to Cameroon and then you see how the police officer treat us, and they're Black just like us, you're not even gonna believe it, you know. And in Cameroon we have this. Have you guys heard of the word like tribalism? So
yeah, it happens in Nigeria.
Yeah, so we do get oppressed too. And
I agree.
So when I'm saying like we need to like look past that, I'm not saying forget what happened to you guys or me. At the end of the day, we cannot just sit and just grieve on the past. We have to be able to move on, but not forget. If I could choose a place to live, it would obviously be my country. I love my country, but right now, my country is not the best choice for me. There's a little genocide going on in Cameroon right now. So many innocent lives are being taken. If I was still in my country, the opportunity that I have here, I would not have those opportunities there.
The American dream is only for white people.
I believe that the American dream is only for white people because it says equal. And when we talk about equal, there's no equality between the 1%, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Trumps, and the people who really run the media and things of that nature. So for Black people growing up in America and living in America, we could become rich, we could become wealthy, but we are not on the equal playing field of white America. The system of white supremacy, which is in the law enforcement, which is in the judicial system, which is in the prison industrial association, also in the politics.
Okay, I definitely get what Skip is saying. So I think this is a common thing that many people have even expressed. A lot of immigrants, if you move, and you move because of this promise that you hear everyone talking about, the American dream. I don't know what they call it for Canada, if they say it's the Canadian dream. But people will come and they realize like it's not really like a bed of roses. It's not sweet sailing. You definitely have to tap into relying on your community most of the time for you to actually make it, because usually they are the ones who will help you to get by, whether it's seeking resources, being aware of certain things that you can tap into. I can speak for myself personally. You know, for years I wasn't really aware of the financial system here, not knowing that I could have invested, you know, earlier on, and it was people who looks like me who actually told me about these things. So it just goes back into sometimes information about ways that you can also better yourself. It's going to come from people who also look like you, who are willing to share that information with you, because everyone else sometimes will like kind of keep it under wraps.
The American dream, at least the way that I define it, is, you know, freedom of opportunity, freedom to choose what I want to do, freedom to acquire wealth the same way that anybody else can. Obviously, we're fighting the tides of time on that and our circumstances, but it's hard because it's hard to honor that, but then also want more for myself. And I think that as Black people, we're always teeter-tottering on that line of like, well, am I American? Like, do I get the American dream, or do we just tear all this down and build something new? White people are not the only people entitled to the American dream, ever. And I think that that's why we're all here, because our ancestors made it so that we can stand here and pursue that American dream.
I wouldn't have been here if it meant that it was not for everyone. I wouldn't have even entered America. You know, I feel like not just African, but other people as well in different countries. And from what I have seen, I've seen other people, even Africans and African Americans, succeeding in their own way. And that's why I feel like you said, you can interpret the American dream in a different way, whatever industry or whatever it is that you're focusing on, because there is a level of opportunity there. There is some way that you can be successful. You know, talking about Trevor Noah, you know, who took over The Daily Show, it wouldn't have been possible for him coming in as an African. He got his American dream. It made us as well, other Africans, believe that it is possible.
The American dream writes his check. So he gets to have wealth or whatever it is that he's experiencing, but the American dream is the one who writes his check.
Okay. So I definitely get what he's saying from that perspective. So again, that's going to definitely be subjective based on your experience and how you look at what the American dream might be. Let's continue.
If he had stayed in South Africa, would he have the same opportunity that he had here?
No.
Like, you know, so corporate is writing his check, but like us growing up, the reason we move here is because we don't have it better back home. Like like for me, I'm the first person ever in my family in America. Everybody else is back home. Everybody's depending on me. Like, all of them, my mom, she's dying to come here. Like, she's willing to do anything just for her to be in America. So for me, when I look at those like little things, I'm like, yeah, American dream is for everybody, you know? Like, yeah, we might not have the same opportunity as the white people, but there's still that little chance a lot of us back home are willing to take just to get here.
I definitely get that.
I trust law enforcement.
I don't have a thing to say.
All right, can the disagreeer step forward?
Yeah, no one's gonna agree with that one.
And I immediately thought about the history of the police too, just tracing that back to slave patrols, which became our modern day police department.
Fun fact.
Oh, the fact that like if you have a felony, you can't vote. Like that to me is like, talk about the loss of the American dream. Like you are a citizen of this country, you should always have a right to vote.
So fun fact, so the guy kind of mentioned it, but it is said that the police, like that we know today, the history of it actually came from. So remember back in the day when enslaved folks would run away, they were in charge of like rounding them up and bringing them back to their slave masters. They call them like the slave catchers or whatever. That is what they say is today's police. That's how it came about. So if anyone knows where you can read more about that, feel free to put more in, you know, the comments or something. But yeah, fun fact there.
We are obsessed with race in America.
I think that word obsessed is such an interesting word, and I think that the way that that question is framed is almost as if it's like the onus is on us, like we're obsessed with race too much. Like, no, white people are obsessed with race in this country. They've made their laws based on it. They've cast us out because of it. They've like destroyed entire groups of people because of it. So, I mean, we're just living in the ripple effects of the stones that were cast in the pond of history. So we're just reacting to it. So we would rather just be human beings and American citizens and, you know, people that are pursuing an American dream. We'd rather not have to think about race, but that, we did not draw first blood on that.
Like, it's so interesting when like systems will be made literally and then they turn around when it backfires and like complains. Like the whole concept or the whole construct of race itself is man-made. That's something that came out of white supremacy to begin with, right? So it's just interesting that when conversations now start to like hold them accountable for things, and we have to now utilize speaking about race in a way to like talk about experiences, people turn around and say you're obsessed with race. So interesting.
What else do you expect?
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm not obsessed.
Yeah.
For me, being in America give me an opportunity to like meet and like discover so many different cultures that I would never see if I was in my country. I would just like maybe hear about it on the news. Yes, I agree. I think they are very obsessed with race. Even when you do like an easy application, like it doesn't matter what application you do, they want to know your race. They want to know, you know, why they don't have a category for Africans. Exactly. You know?
That's why I'm checking out every time.
Like, they want to know everything.
The thing that pissed me off the most is that when they see you and they be like, oh, you have an accent. Where are you from? Like, who cares where I'm from? Just sell me this thing and let me keep going.
And then when you tell them that you're African, they be like, what country?
Yeah, they're so obsessed with where you're from.
You should be like Wakanda.
Like, it's been really beautiful having this conversation with you guys. You guys are very knowledgeable, and I've learned a whole lot from each and every one of you today.
Going into this with like the title of the series, like African versus African American, I think that like people were gonna come in thinking that we were gonna be like guns blazing, but this is such a beautiful display of unity. I love it. It like gave me so much life today.
Yes, I loved it. Yes, I totally agree. This was a beautiful conversation. I really love, like, this is what needs to happen more. You don't have to agree or have the same perspective. It's about being willing to sit down with people who have different views, but then you're hearing the reason behind those views. Because I felt like every time I was like agreeing with one side and then someone else says something and I'm like, I see your point there. But shout out to Skip, the elder in there. I love that they kind of had like that balance of having someone who could speak to, you know, the 1960s. He's given like experiences from when he was younger to really talk a bit more about the experience of Black Americans. So yeah, I will put a link in the description for you to go watch the entire video because I could not react to all the portions of it, but definitely a great conversation. And yeah, thank you for watching this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see y'all in another video. Bye.